Before we jump into this podcast, let's just have a first word from our sponsors, NordVPN, the fastest VPN in the world and an absolute essential travelling companion. You can use NordVPN on 10 devices with just one account, easily switching your virtual location to access apps and websites in other countries. But if you're out of the country, make sure that you've got NordVPN to be able to use your subscriptions and watch the live sport that you might miss. If you're at home, use it to see if you can save money with products that might be cheaper in another region. Go to nordvpn.com/Manchester to get 4 extra months on the 2-year plan. The link is also in the podcast description. Hello and welcome to the Manchester is Red podcast. My name is Steven Railston. We're recording this episode on a Friday morning. I'm joined, as always now, by David McDonnell. David, how are you? I'm mildly hungover because a United staff member left last night. It was a leaving party in town. You weren't there. I think, was it child arrangements?
Yeah, childcare issues.
So you're probably a little fresher than me this morning.
Yes, I'd hope so. I missed that. It was Michael Gibson, who's been a great source of help to us all on the comms side. He's going to pastures new, so I trust he got a good send off.
He did. I was just saying to yourself before we recorded there, it's these staff members at the football club that perhaps fans don't realise the work they do behind the scenes. I recall a story with a fan called Eddie Thomas. I think he was a season ticket holder since 1964. I think if I've got that right, that's impressive. If I've remembered that.
Yeah, given last night.
But anyways, he's a platinum season ticket holder. He's one of the best fans you can meet. He travels home and away, has done for years, and he helped him retain his season ticket after an issue. And without his work behind the scenes, he wouldn't have kept his ticket. So it's little things like that that go on behind the scenes that you really appreciate staff members going the extra yards and helping out.
Absolutely. And also Michael's been great. He's done a lot of work on the stadium proposals, the new stadium proposals, a lot of work briefing behind the scenes on a lot of stuff, that might not make the headlines, might not make the back pages, might not, be sensational news, but it's all stuff that needs to be done. He's going on to a new role elsewhere, and we wish him well.
And best of luck to him. Yeah, he's off to Spain, isn't he?
MotoGP, isn't he?
Yeah, well, he needs to brush up on his knowledge, I think, about MotoGP.
Well, the weather's better in Madrid than in Manchester, so
that's true. That's true.
That's one bonus.
We'll just start the podcast with a discussion of players who have improved since leaving United. We've kind of discussed what to talk about today, and then we'll look ahead to the Sunderland game, obviously tomorrow afternoon at Old Trafford. It's probably a relevant point because on Wednesday night, Rasmus Hojlund scores twice for Napoli. A really good performance, 2 good finishes. His first was brilliantly taken. His second was a great header. Kevin De Bruyne assisted both, and I think he uploaded on social media with the caption, Hojlund scoring twice in the Champions League, assisted by Kevin De Bruyne. That wasn't on my bingo card in 2025, which I thought was quite funny. If he's sorted that himself, fair play, but it's probably someone in his team that's
social media team.
That's posted that. Anyhow, there is a lot of players at United who have left the club and performed. Why, David? Is there a curse at Old Trafford? Is it McTominay's talked about the tomatoes, and I mentioned that in a piece yesterday. He's talked about the fresh tomatoes in Naples. It's lovely. He's never tasted them before. Is it the freshly picked tomatoes in Italy, or is there a curse? What is it? Why do players improve?
Well, it used to be the old kind of adage, didn't it? Or the old sort of saying that, anywhere, once you leave Manchester United, the only way is down for players. Now, a lot of them currently are proving that adage wrong. You mentioned Rasmus Hojlund there, scoring twice in midweek for Napoli. You look at Anthony Elanga, went to Nottingham Forest, now at Newcastle, thriving there. Anthony obviously thrived, when he left United recently, went to Real Betis on loan and has now moved there permanently. These players, I'm sure there are others I can't think at the moment.
McTominay, obviously, Hojlund,
at Napoli.
Rashford as well, I think he's
Rashford at Barcelona, obviously got the 2 goals against Newcastle. Obviously had that slip up where he was late for the team meeting. The following game he was on the bench, but I mean he seems to be thriving there. Listen, we talk about this a lot, and we've talked about it in previous podcasts earlier in the week and maybe last week. People maybe don't grasp the pressure that comes with playing for Manchester United. Now you can say there's pressure playing for Barcelona, of course, and it may be the change of environment. Players, suddenly thrive and they've got a point to prove, and whether they're stuck in a rut at Manchester United and suddenly they feel liberated when they leave, mentally as much as, tactically and physically. Mentally, it's quite taxing playing for Manchester United. The scrutiny, players always say this to us and managers say that, they come from maybe big clubs, what they think are big clubs. And yet when they come to Manchester United, their eyes are open because, wherever they go, the scrutiny is huge, the focus is huge. There's no escaping it, really. It's a global, phenomenon. Manchester United, a global brand, and other clubs, of course, are the Barcelonas, the Real Madrids, and Liverpool. These clubs have huge followings around the world, but I think Manchester United is unique in that sense. So I think it's a pressure. I think also you look at someone like Hojlund. I mean, it's obviously the way Manchester United play as well. They weren't getting the best out of him. He wasn't getting the service that he got, say, from Kevin De Bruyne on Wednesday night. I can't recall those kind of through balls being played for Hojlund at Manchester United. Maybe there were the wingers, maybe Garnacho and other wingers just didn't provide the service. They're quite selfish players. They want to take players on themselves. The first instinct isn't to get the ball into the box for the striker. Whereas someone like De Bruyne, his first instinct obviously is to play. I think he was saying that go long. Don't come deep for the ball. Go long, and I'll find you. And you saw that with the first goal. De Bruyne won the ball in midfield, and Hojlund made the run early, and De Bruyne played as you'd expect him to do, an inch perfect pass. And I thought Hojlund's first touch was immaculate as well, and the finish was clinical. United fans would be scratching their heads saying, hang on, where was that Hojlund? He got 5 goals, I think 4 in the Premier League, 5 goals last season. And he's got 2 now in the Champions League already. And I thought it was quite interesting that he pointed to the Champions League badge. He said afterwards in the interview, he was very diplomatic and said, I think he was asked about why I pointed the badge. He said, I love scoring goals in the Champions League. But it was almost like a bit of a swipe at Manchester United and maybe Ruben Amorim and the club and say, look, you discarded me, but here I am now, showcasing what I can do on the biggest stage in European football. And of course, United aren't even in Europe this season. So I think there's an element of him sort of saying, almost proverbial 2 fingers up to Manchester United. But listen, no one knows why players thrive. The only logical, when they leave Manchester United, the only logical kind of assumption is that they feel unburdened. They don't feel that same sense of pressure.
There's not a curse. You're telling us at all. There's not a curse. Perhaps not.
I'm not sure. I wouldn't subscribe.
I think
you could be right.
I think the price tags come into it, don't they? Because United more often than not overpay for players, and when they arrive at a football club, they're burdened with this huge price tag, and whether they admit it or not, that will come into their performances. They are aware of how much they're signed for.
Think that way when because
I think when
Rasmus Hojlund go out there thinking, Christ, United have paid 72 million for me. I've got to deliver. Maybe
I think subconsciously in the back of your mind, you are aware of how much the club have paid for you, and you, as you've said, the club is the most scrutinised club in England. Outside of Barcelona and Real Madrid, it has that pressure, it has that intensity to it, and I think that does affect players. And even at the weekend after Brentford's defeat, we've come on the podcast and we've discussed it and picked over the bones and whatnot. And I don't think you get that scrutiny at any other football club, do you really? No. And obviously Liverpool is quite similar.
Yeah, it's comparable.
Yeah, but I think the scrutiny at United is just another level. And when they're paying that sort of money for players, I think that does factor in. Anthony, £86 million that deal's worth. That summer United just kept on saying, okay, we're still in talks, with Ajax, we're putting up the price, and finally they settled on a deal. If he had been signed for £30 million, it probably would have been an all right signing. But I think that has to be factored in, I believe, the price tags.
Yeah, I mean, that narrative around Anthony was always, he's
an £86 million
how did
player.
Manchester United get to pay this much? Because I think initially they were quoted about 40 million or 45 million.
And if they'd signed them for 40 million, then obviously he made a very good start, scored in his first 3 games. Performances were bad after that, but it doesn't. The signing's not as bad if it's £40 million.
Yeah, I agree with you in the sense of it creates a narrative around a player. So if United, as they invariably do, because there's obviously a United tax because of the revenue Manchester United generate, because of their commercial, they're a commercial juggernaut and they have these huge revenues. Clubs obviously hike the price up for Manchester United. That's been the case for decades now, and something Sir Alex Ferguson always complained about, that there's a United tax. I think that creates a narrative around players. I'm not so sure whether players, I don't know, you'd have to speak to the players themselves. They're not going to probably publicly admit that. Certainly not while they're playing. Maybe once they've retired, they might say, yeah, it weighed heavily on me, that price tag. But I'm not sure whether players go out on the pitch thinking, I've really got to deliver because they paid so much money for me. But I do think from our perspective, or from the perspective of fans, it does create a narrative that, well, we should be getting much more than this, than we're getting for a player we've paid 86 million
and then
for.
Surely that is liberating if you do leave United, and there has been that narrative around, for example, Anthony or Hojlund, and then you leave to join a new club and you escape that narrative, you escape that pressure. That surely contributes to why you'd be better and why there's an improved performance level there.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's players should be able to go out, as I say, unburdened and play with the freedom, and they're obviously talented players. Yeah, the players that have done well at other clubs. I just feel that the environment may not be right for them at Manchester United, and that's been the case for the last 13 years. Since Sir Alex, 12 years since Sir Alex retired. A succession of managers have not been able to create a winning environment. Okay, they've won trophies in isolation and sporadic trophies, and they've finished second. Jose finished second. Oli finished second, I think, twice, was it? I think, possibly. But they've never been able to create a sustained environment where players can thrive. And I just think the constant changing of managers as well doesn't help players. We talked about Ruben Amorim and his position being under threat. There's so many different factors that you have to come into play with players. But I struggle with this notion that price tag is a factor for them, because I think they've already proven that they're good enough to play for Manchester United. They've already proven that they're good enough to play professional football at the highest level. I just think it might be the environment they come into that doesn't get the best out of them. It's not conducive for them producing their best.
I completely agree. They won't be thinking about it each week. I think that's stupid to say that, but I think you're right in the sense that it contributes to the narrative, and naturally they will be affected around the narrative.
Yeah, that creates a pressure around
the external noise, around the players. But you make a very good point where when these players join new football clubs, Napoli, for example, Antonio Conte was obviously across there when McTominay joined. He's been a revelation, and now Hojlund. So a lot of the time, those teams are better organised, and they have better dressing rooms, perhaps, and they're heading in a better direction. So if you are joining a club who the parts are a lot better, it's easier to perform as well. And there's been a lot wrong at United in the last 12 years.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say that as well. It's Manchester United, let's be honest, at the moment is a very dysfunctional football club. Has been that way for many years. The new regime are trying to remedy that with structural changes behind the scenes, and lots of stuff going on that is aimed at making the club more effective behind the scenes, and therefore better on the pitch, and producing a team that can win consistently. And of course that relates to transfers as well, not overpaying for players, trying to bring a bit more clarity and strategy towards recruitment. But I do feel if players are, say, going into a club like Napoli, where obviously the structure is clearly established, the coach is established, there's a way of playing there. It's easier to hit the ground running. It's easier to slot in straight away than if you come into Manchester United, where Ruben Amorim came in halfway through last season. Erik ten Hag, there was all the uncertainty about his position over the previous summer after he won the FA Cup. Then he got the stay of execution. Then he lasted 9 league games. It's not conducive. Players need continuity in terms of a voice in the dressing room, in terms of a tactical approach. Players are creatures of habit. They need this kind of continuity. So I do think you're right, Steve, that if a club has the right structure and the right management in place, if you're a player going into that scenario, it's far easier to produce your best and thrive than it is coming into a dysfunctional club like Manchester United.
It's hard to perform coming into a struggling team, isn't it? And give your best. When you look at those players, when you look at that list, and I think this is an important point as well, United weren't wrong to let go any of those players. And there's obviously some revisionism when a player leaves and performs well. But if you look at McTominay, perhaps he is the one who you could say they should have kept.
Yeah.
But the others, for me, it was the correct decision to move them on. I think, having said that, with McTominay, it was logical in the sense that the banked, it was £26 million fixed, was it? Or
and then with the add-ons, it took it up to 30
so
odd.
For PSR, for an academy graduate, to bank that pure profit in the books, that was incredibly helpful that summer.
Yeah.
But the other players, I think, they were bang on in that sense to move them on.
I think so. I mean, look, McTominay was always an underrated player, I felt, at Manchester United. Scored some really important goals, very versatile, could play as a midfielder, very adept at playing up front. We saw, obviously, Eric used him quite a lot as an emergency striker, a bit like Harry Maguire at times.
It's
and
almost
he scored some crucial goals.
The the found his role, found what he was good at. Finally, after all these years, because he was pigeonholed as a deep line midfielder when he probably wasn't. He was fantastic.
He started off as a striker, didn't he?
When he was a teenager. But he's created those runs into the box, and then once they found what he was good at, they got rid of him. That's what it was almost like.
I mean, the problem is, around this discussion is that it doesn't reflect well on anybody at Manchester United that players leave and then go on to do really well elsewhere. It smacks of the club not providing the right environment, not getting the best out of these players. It reflects badly on the management, on the coaches, on everybody there. So it's something that has been a feature of, recently of players suddenly going. Now it'd be interesting to see whether Hojlund can continue that scoring streak. Of course, it's almost like the new manager bounce, isn't it? You go to a new club, you feel liberated.
It's the new tomato bounce. Once he starts eating those tomatoes, nothing can stop him.
Yeah, not the Aldi or little tomatoes. But I just feel that it's important to sort of see how maybe Hojlund progresses over time and Rashford at Barcelona. You inevitably have that new bounce and that spring in your step when you go to a new club and you can perform and you really go the extra mile. It's like anything, if you go to a new job or anything, you kind of, you want to hit the ground running and show people what you can do. It'd be interesting to see if they can sustain that level of form over a period of time, because that's the true test, isn't it? Consistency over a prolonged period. So, but yeah, it is interesting because it just seems that it's such a pressured environment, Manchester United, and as I say, players, you can just see them. I mean, in Hojlund's demeanour on the pitch, was just liberated. He was just felt unburdened. He felt unpressured.
But it's the perfect recipe, isn't it? To improve and to have a new lease of life. If you are liberated from that price tag. You've got less scrutiny on yourself. You've got a fresh start. When you roll all those things into one, of course, these players are going to perform better. It's the perfect recipe for success, really, isn't it?
And that's why they're playing with a smile on their face, which is...
And that is key as well. A lot of these players have been, in certain instances, unhappy with their situations. Anthony, for example.
Yeah.
And just having that happiness in your personal life helps a lot at work.
I think Hojlund, it's very interesting. We spoke to Hojlund in, was it New York, I think, after the first game? I can't remember. I think he scored on the pre-season tour, I think, against West Ham.
Well, famously, he obviously came out and said he wanted to fight for his place.
Well, that was, I think, it was then, and he actually sought us out in the mix zone. So he obviously wanted to get that message out there. And he came over to us and said, does anyone want to interview me? Of course we do. And he was very, very sort of firm in the sense of saying, I want to fight for my place. No one's told me otherwise. He knew full well that United obviously were moving for Sesko, that behind the scenes they were trying to move him on. But it was interesting that he came out and said that. And of course, he was determined to sort of say, listen, I'm a player that wants to fight for my place, but I've not had the help as well. That was the other interesting thing. He said, I've not had the help that I should have had at Manchester United, in that he was forced to play at 20 or 21 years old, I think he was, when he came to, was he 20, I think? When he came
21.
21, when he came to Manchester United. To be leading the line at that age. And he basically, what he was saying was, I didn't get the help I needed. I was a young striker coming in to the Premier League to lead the line at Manchester United, and I should have had help. And he didn't get it. He was forced to lead the line on his own, because I think Rashford was out of favour.
I said before that
there was no one to come in and just ease that pressure on him and take him out the firing line for a few games. He played, I don't know the stats, but I think he played virtually every week. And for a young player finding their way mentally as well, that can be absolutely draining. And he admitted as such in that interview in New York. He said, "Look, I needed to be taken out at times, and I didn't get that opportunity." And I think that as much was probably to blame for his lack of goals, because he was just a spent force for quite a bit of the time.
I said before that probably McTominay was the only one you could maybe think they were wrong to move on, but I did make the point in the summer that I thought Hojlund should have been kept. I think, obviously bringing in Sesko, who has a very similar profile, very similar players in the sense that he's improving in the Premier League. But if Hojlund had been that backup striker, had been the number 2, he would have benefited from that a lot. And I think not having the burden of being the man of scoring all the goals each week would have sparked improvement. And he wasn't as bad as he's not as bad as he showed last season. No. He had a very good first season, had a big backward step last year, but he's better than that. His performances...
Well, he showed that on Wednesday.
Exactly. Yeah. He took those goals brilliantly, to be fair though.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's difficult for Manchester United. The failure to qualify for Europe was obviously necessitates a smaller squad, because you have fewer games, even fewer now with the EFL Cup exit to Grimsby. So you're limited to Premier League games. Ruben Amorim has to operate with a smaller squad. Obviously, you've got Xerxes, who could play there. Mount can play as a false 9. I agree with you, Steve. I think Hojlund, would have benefited from maybe staying, but then he wouldn't have played. That's the problem you've got. You're not playing, and players get disaffected. We've seen that with Kobbie Mainoo. Players get disaffected when they're not playing. Kobbie's asked to go out on loan. That request was turned down. You've got to keep players happy, and to keep players happy, they have to keep playing. And if you haven't got the games, how are you going to keep all these players happy? So I think probably on the balance of I think it was probably the right decision for Hojlund to go. And good luck to him. He's clearly, as you say, a far better striker than he showed last season at Manchester United.
And I think that's the thing. I think there's no bitterness, is that I think it's frustration when fans are watching these players improve, but they all want them to succeed because there's no ill will there. From us guys as well, we write about these players and we talk about these players, and it is nice on a personal level to see them go and do well.
I mean, yeah, you could see it both ways. You could say, well, why wasn't he, pulling his finger out like that at United? Or you can go the other way and say, well, why weren't the coaches and the manager getting that out of him? It's their obligation. One of my colleagues asked, and this has been a recurring theme at United, I can't remember who it was, but said to Ruben Amorim, I think it might have been wasn't over Garnacho, but it was one of the other players who's moved on. Isn't it a failing on your part that you've got a talented player here, which is clearly talented, these players, and you've not been able to, you failed in your duty as a manager?
If Amorim had just took Garnacho's phone off him and shut down all the social media accounts, maybe it would be a different story. Maybe it would have been a success. But
I mean, he's another one, all right, he's, you got the abuse and you'd expected him to get that from United fans because of the acrimonious way in which he left the club in the summer. But I think in midweek, wasn't it his cross that led to the own goal for Chelsea in their Champions League game? So he seems to be another player that's finding his feet at Chelsea and looks to be playing a game with a smile on his face with a lot more freedom. So I think it goes back to the environment. I think you've got to create the right environment for players in which they can deliver their best, because they're all talented, they've all the ability. It's just providing them with that, launch pad for them to do that.
We'll move on then, because it's a big game obviously on Saturday afternoon.
There's a game, isn't there?
There is actually a football match.
3 o'clock kick-off as well.
There won't be for another 2 weeks, unfortunately, after this one.
We're going to talk about them.
Another international break after the September one there very soon. A huge game. Every game feels like a must-win game at the moment, but especially after the Brentford match, it was a huge setback. A big response to the City defeat with a spirited win against Chelsea. We came on the podcast on Monday. We've talked about it at length, what went wrong, what it means for Amorim. And I made the point that when the club field inquiries about the manager and they have to clarify the manager's position, it's very difficult to recover from then. This is a must-win game. He needs to win. If he doesn't win, you'd fear for his future across the international break. Sunderland have just been promoted. They've made a very good start. They've made some very good signings. Yeah. But United should be winning these football matches.
Yeah, I mean, I was having
especially at home.
We were having this conversation before we came on here, and we were saying, is it a must-win or is it a must-not lose? I think it's a must-win. I think you've got to be beating, as good as Sunderland are, in the sense of they've had a great start, 11 points, I think, fifth in the table. These are the kind of games at home Manchester United have to win, not should be winning, have to win. And I think in the context of the start that United have had under Ruben this season, 7 points from 18, you can't afford to draw. Certainly can't afford to lose, but you have to win. So it's a huge, huge game for him. I mean, we've been here before, haven't we, with managers where we think it's the end of the road and they limp on for another few weeks. And again, I don't think there is, speaking to people at United behind the scenes, the message is that it's business as usual. After the Brentford defeat, there was an open day for players and their families on the Sunday, day after the Brentford defeat, a chance for the families and the children and the partners and wives to come and see the new facilities at Carrington, to have a tour of them. I think there were some children's activities put on. So in that sense, Ruben Amorim is not giving off the impression of a manager that's on the brink. It's just on the pitch where everything's falling apart, and he has to get it right on Saturday, because I think the pressure will mount on him, and there might not be an appetite to make a change in the boardroom from Sir Jim or Omar Barada or Jason Wilcox, but the fans generally don't turn on the manager or the team. But I think that could change on Saturday if they lose. I think there could be a lot of hostility towards them, because this is a team that should be performing way, way better than it is. Ruben's had the whole pre-season that he wanted. He's been backed heavily in the transfer market. He's got the players he wanted. He probably would have wanted a midfielder, didn't get that. But, and he's stuck by his system. He's stuck by his formation. He's stuck by the way he's playing Bruno Fernandes in that deeper role. So he has to live or die by these decisions. So I think it's a must-win game. No other way of looking at it.
He retains the support of match-going fans. There's banners in the Stretford end, there's chance.
There's a willingness for him to succeed.
From everyone involved, but it's not been good enough. I agree that it is a must-win. In terms of practical solutions for Saturday, because we've talked about Brentford and the fallout, in terms of what he can actually do, because he's not going to change the system. We know that by now.
Yeah.
In terms of the tweaks that he can make, I would have Lomans in.
I would too.
Having said that, I'll give Bain his flowers because he actually performed well against Brentford.
Made a couple of great saves early on.
He really did, and Brentford would have been out of sight if it wasn't for his intervention. So he actually had a good game. But I'm sticking with my opinion that Lomans should be in over Bain there. And then the midfield is a problem, isn't it? We'll discuss that at length again after Brentford. And I think for myself, I'd start Casemiro and Mainu together in the pivot, and I'd move Fernandes further forward.
But that means dropping one of Cunha and Mbeumo.
Well, do you know what? Could you drop Bruno Fernandes? It's a big thing to say. It's a huge thing to say. But on form, on performances, he's had a bad start to the season.
Be a brave call that. I mean, I wrote a piece yesterday about this, saying that Bruno's looked so out of sorts. He's missed 2 of his last 3 penalties. He doesn't look happy in that midfield role, that deeper midfield role. Publicly, he'll say all the right things. I'll play wherever the manager wants me to. Players always do that. But behind the scenes, I think there is disenchantment, disillusionment. And again, we talked about this on Monday. You do wonder whether there is a sense of maybe among the United hierarchy, maybe we should have taken that 100 million for Bruno Fernandes from Al Hilal in the summer. Maybe we made the wrong decision there. I think that was, as I said on Monday, I think that was probably born out of fear. How would it look if we're selling our best player? But if you've got a Baleba or a Wharton in for 100 million, with the midfield would certainly be in a better state. But I just feel maybe hanging on to Bruno Fernandes at 31, when that kind of money is available, I think I know why they did it, and I can see the optics, but I just think it might have been a mistake. And I think if Bruno had known that he was going to be, shoehorned into this midfield role and not played further up the pitch where he's more effective, where he's more comfortable, where he has more influence, I think he may well have made a different decision.
We saw it last season, didn't we? Was it in February that he started to play him there? It was the latter part of the campaign anyways, and I wasn't sure whether it would continue into this season, but it obviously has. I think this system with Amram, it demands a world-class number 6 for it to succeed. Yeah. If they had Casemiro in his pomp, the Casemiro of Real Madrid, then that system would probably work. It asks a lot of the midfielders, and United at the moment don't have the midfielders to accommodate what Amram wants. But he has to make do with what he's got. Yeah. And I think he has to move Fernandes back out. It's been a huge conversation, and we've made a lot of Kobbie Mainoo as well. I don't want to make this a Kobbie Mainoo podcast where we just come on every week and talk about Kobbie Mainoo. But it is becoming like that because you look at what he can do to improve the team and to try spark a bit of improvement. Surely that is now playing Mainoo in that midfield. It's got to that stage now where you think he has to play, surely. Yeah, just for the sake of something different.
I think the most damning aspect of Bruno Fernandes playing midfield is that it's clearly the message Ruben Amorim is sending out is that I don't trust Kobbie Mainoo or Manuel Ugarte in that position, which is really damning towards those 2 players. Both of whom are full internationals. Mainoo's started for England.
Is it damning for those 2 players, or is it damning on Amorim? I would argue it's the latter.
Well, I mean, it depends which way you look at it, but I mean, it's not a good look for those players.
Maybe not with Ugarte because he's had a disappointing start to the season.
But he obviously, what he's saying is I'd rather play our best attacking player and our biggest goal threat in a position he's not comfortable with and not happy with, because I think I trust him there more than I trust you two. I think that's the most damning thing. And that's on Ruben. But as you say, Steve, the evidence, Ugarte didn't have a great game against Brentford. I thought when Mainoo came on, he actually brought more energy to the midfield.
Because he lost the ball, didn't he, for the 3rd goal. But before,
people will highlight that.
You made the point that it is incredibly hard when you get thrown in and you've not been playing to give the best account of yourself. But before that, there was some very good moments. And we've seen that in the last few weeks in flashes, even against Grimsby when he started, against City off the bench. I know there's been some bad results there, but there have been some kind of green shoots and bright sparks from Mainoo when he's come on.
Yeah, and also I think the current personnel, the current system, okay, we know he's not going to change the formation, but the current personnel isn't working. So why keep persisting with that and thinking and hoping that it's going to change? I would start Mainoo on Saturday. I would start Mainoo with Casemiro. And then you've got the decision whether to play Bruno Fernandes as one of the 2 number 10s and drop Mbeumo or Cunha. because I think you have to play Sesko because he needs games. I think he needs the confidence of and the belief in the manager that he is going to lead the line. So I think you play mainly there, and then you've got a decision to make. Dropping Bruno, massive call. I mean, if he did that and they won, that creates a whole new problem.
It's
for
actually
him.
logical. I'd never call for it because he's such a fantastic footballer and he makes it tick and he's the driving force. But on form and on performances, he should be dropped.
Yeah. I mean, and he's been undroppable. I mean, we've asked this question of previous United bosses. Ole bought him, obviously, and he was undroppable then when he came in because he just hit the ground running and he was scoring and doing everything. And then he became undroppable under Eric. And also his availability is a key thing. He's never injured. He always makes himself available, plays through the pain barrier. His ability to recover, from midweek games. Obviously, there aren't any midweek games this season, but his ability to go again every 2 or 3 days is remarkable. He's got such great consistency in terms of selection. But I think you're right. I think it would send a message out that no one's untouchable here. That you have to earn your place on merit. I'm not so sure Ruben Amorim is that bold, and I don't think he's got so many options there. You look at the bench on Saturday.
The back three is relatively interesting, isn't it? Because Yoro started on the bench again. That was a talking point, and I've spoken to some fans this week to gauge their opinions on Amorim, and they said when they saw Yoro on the bench, they were thinking, why? Straight away, does it not make sense to start Yoro, Maguire and De Ligt on Saturday afternoon? I think that would be my back three.
I think so, yeah. I think Yoro deserves to start. I mean, he didn't have a great game at City. Obviously, Shaw played well against Chelsea, but then had a stinker against Brentford. But they all did, to be fair. So I think, Yoro deserves to come back in. I think probably Maguire and De Ligt. And then you've got obviously the wing backs. Ahmed's back in the frame. Obviously, he was missing on compassionate leave following a family bereavement. So I'd imagine he will come back in as right wing back, and Dorgu will remain at left wing back. That means Dalot, who came back at Brentford, will probably drop out. I mean, we know the rest of it really. Casemiro and either Fernandes or Menu, and then the front three. So it's a huge selection call for Ruben. He's got to get it right, and he's got to get the tone of the performance. Listen, the result is the most important thing, but I do think as well there's an underlying issue here in terms of performance. The fans deserve. I mean, we keep saying this. When have you come away from a Manchester United game recently and thought, wow, they played fantastic?
They've been teasing
they
decent
got you off your
performances.
seat,
They've been teasing it, but they've not been able to actually perform throughout 90 minutes and sustain that level.
Genuinely cannot think of a game under Ruben where they've really been.
The first 45 against Burnley, they need to do that for 90 minutes against Sunderland. And wouldn't it be fantastic to have a 3-0 or a 4-0 and a convincing performance before the international break? That's what they really need. You're right.
Yeah. And I think as well, I mean, it was quite funny. I bumped into a friend of mine walking the dog the other day, a big United fan who's been a season ticket holder for 40 odd years. And he said he's reading a book about Sir Matt Busby at the moment. And he said, what's striking from that book is Sir Matt just told the players, go out and play, go out and enjoy it. And I think we get bogged down in formations and systems and low blocks and high presses and, three at the back and all this sort of stuff. Listen, those principles are important. Obviously, you've got to have a structure. But I think the fans just want to see a team go out there and play the Manchester United way, play with that attacking swagger.
But that's not that formation.
I know it isn't. But I think this goes back to what I'm saying about they have to win at all costs on Saturday, tomorrow. They have to win at all costs. But I think the way they win is important as well. And that's always been the way at Manchester United. It's not just enough to win. You've got to win with style. You've got to win with the swagger. And this is what I'm saying. Of course, in the modern game, there's so much data and scrutiny and focus on formation systems and all these kind of different elements. But naturally, the game of football is quite a simple one. Go out there, showcase your best players, play with pace, play with passion, and go out there and score more goals.
You're getting into Michael Owen territory. Just put the ball in the back of the net.
I know. Listen, some people.
I get what you're saying.
People will listen to this and say, "Oh, that's too simplistic." But okay. But I mean, the game has moved on. I know. But I just think sometimes those basic virtues, those basic principles, get lost in the kind of fog of data and stats and whatever. XGs, all this sort of the dreaded XGs. I mean, listen. There is a time and a place for those, but I think at the moment Manchester United just need to go out on Saturday and put a hatful of goals past Sunderland, and suddenly that will get the crowd going. It'll ease the pressure on Ruben. Will it happen? I'm not so sure.
I was thinking actually when we do our reflection of Sunderland, that podcast, I was thinking we do an expected goal special, so we really get into expected goals in the day. What do you think about that? Do you think that'll work well? Thanks for your time, David. We'll push for time because it's a press conference today, isn't it?
How's the head, by the way?
Teeling.
You've done well to get through this.
Yeah, exactly. I hope it hasn't come across that I am mildly hungover, but I think I've done all right, haven't I?
Done a great job, to be fair.
Like I say, we're off to the press conference, aren't we? So Amram will have the latest team news and whatnot, but we're not expecting anything unless there's been something that's happened this week. But
nothing revelatory, apart from Ahmad being back in contention, because obviously he missed with that bereavement. I mean, the trouble is, as we've said many times here, you just know what you're getting with United in terms of the personnel, and that's the problem. Managers, opposing teams know exactly how they're going to line up. Give or take a couple of players. They certainly know how they're going to line up in formation.
That's not going to change because even if the Pope asks him, he's not going to change. So it's unfortunate. And until something changes, perhaps managerial, and another man comes in, that's nothing's going to change in that sense. Right, we'll leave it there. Thanks, David. Thanks for your time as usual. Thanks to listeners. We'll be back after the Sunderland game to reflect on the performance. Hopefully it's a win. Enjoy your weekend.